We get a major update on Filip Hronek's injury and his return to action, and an NHL insider links the Vancouver Canucks to multiple defensemen, saying that a trade is imminent. We're going to break all this down and more later on this episode. Before we start, I just want to give a huge shout out to everyone that's watching and enjoying these videos. We're almost at our goal of 6,000 subscribers, so if you haven't subscribed yet and you're enjoying the content, make sure to go down and hit that subscribe button. But Griffin, we got to hop straight into multiple topics today, but the first one being that Filip Hronek is returning to action, not for the Vancouver Canucks, but we do see the Vancouver Canucks PRSA and Patrik Allvin announced today Filip Hronek has been assigned to Abbotsford for a conditioning stint. Now, seeing on this, I believe the Abbotsford Canucks are on a 6-game road trip now, or a 6-game home trip. Sorry if I'm messing this up. But seeing Hronek getting back on the ice, getting some action, maybe in the AHL, while also training with them, how big in a step of the right direction do you think this is for him?
I think this is massive. I think this is something that we usually see when a player comes back from the IR. They go down to the minors for a little bit, get their legs underneath them, get the feel back for a bit, and then you throw them and feed them back into the deep water with the Sharks and see how they do with coming back from injury after a few AHL games. Thankfully, with Abbotsford, he's going into a fairly good situation. Abbotsford's been playing fairly well this season. They've got a lot of guys rolling. They're getting going on a lot of things. The goaltending's been solid. A lot of good point scoring as well going on. So it's going into a good fit for Hronek to get back on the ice and get his legs back underneath him. Maybe we see him score a few goals in that little stint. I would love to see at least 3, maybe, depending on how many games he's playing. I know he's not necessarily a goal-scoring defenseman, but just because I want him to be just so hungry to get back to the NHL and back on the NHL ice, that would be a great way of showing how hungry he is, or just going out there laying hits, or just being a feather ruffler like we saw in that first clip from last season in Calgary when they said that they had holidays coming up in a few days. Want to see more of that Hronek. We didn't get to see him reach his full form yet this season, so I think him coming back from IR, obviously that's big. Going to Abbotsford for a little bit already so soon after coming off IR, that's also big. So then it's only a matter of time before he comes back to this Vancouver Canucks lineup and we can finally shape up a little bit of this defensive core and do some damage control.
Yeah, because the biggest thing is we've seen him go out with his upper and lower body injury. Hronek has been good for the Canucks this year. 1 goal, 8 assists, 9 points in 21 games. He did sign his extension. He's 27 years old, and he eats quite a lot of minutes with 23 minutes and 36 seconds time on ice. He was the right-hand man for Quinn Hughes, and this was a major part of this D-core that was missing. Yes, we missed out on Quinn for a couple of games, which is the biggest missing piece on this Canucks team before he came back. But looking at the D pairings without Hronek in it, it does leave a lot to not be desired. Tyler Myers playing in the top line does not seem great. Working this out, once you get someone like Hronek back, you can slide Myers back down and hopefully him and Soucy get some chemistry like they had last year. You have Forbort and Desharnais as almost a shutdown, big, physical third pairing. This is where Hronek could come straight back in and fill out that top pairing. I mean, looking at the advanced stats of Quinn Hughes and Hronek playing together, they were debatably and honestly, I would say, the best pairing in the entire NHL, and if not the best, a top 3 pairing. But looking at this, once they do get Hronek back, would you like to see him go back with Quinn, or would you like to try to change things up maybe and put him on the second pairing with someone like Carson Soucy?
I think maybe after a few games, if things aren't clicking like they want to with him and Quinn, yeah, then you go and switch it up. But Quinn Hughes is his co-pilot. Those guys are partners. Those guys are on the ice together as a pairing for a reason. Quinn even said in the offseason how upset he was that they would be potentially breaking them up as a duo because of how much production they put up last season. So I think it's a no-brainer that once Hronek is back, he's going into that top pairing. They're not paying him that much money just to be on the bottom pairing or in the middle pairing. And yes, hopefully, like you said, when he comes back, we can see Soucy and Myers kind of cook like they did last season. We haven't seen that really much this season. However, there is another player that we're going to talk about in a little bit that I think that I would like to see paired with Hronek because he's a dual threat defenseman. He's fast. He can hit. He can do everything you need a defenseman to do. He's been our second best defenseman this season, and that is Erik Brannstrom. If it's not Carson Soucy that Hronek is playing with other than Quinn Hughes, definitely love to see Brannstrom back in this lineup and paired with Hronek because I think that would be an interesting pair to see.
And just talking about other defensemen, before we get into that, I just want to say, go down and leave a comment. I want your thoughts on where you want Hronek to play. But talking on other defensemen, we did get an insight from Frank Seravalli today on a podcast, and he kind of did a deep dive on the Vancouver Canucks. Once again, shout out to Canucks Summary on Twitter. He summarizes absolutely everything around the NHL. He's an awesome Twitter account, so make sure to go look at it. But he said, and this was Frank Seravalli, at some point the front office is going to go out and get another defenseman. You can pause and really read through this, but there is two defensemen we really wanted to look at. The first one, when Frank asked, is Bowen Byram available? He said, sure he is. So looking at Bowen Byram, which is the first defenseman we want to touch on, I do think he fits great on this team. Bowen Byram, 41 games with the Buffalo Sabres this year, 5 goals, 17 assists for 22 points. You can pause, you can read through his stats, but the biggest thing is he is an RFA at the end of it. If the Canucks wanted to go out and pick up another defenseman, another puck-moving defenseman, to move the needle on this second pairing, maybe to be Hronek's new partner, Bowen Byram would be a great fit. Yes, the injury concerns that we've seen through Byron's career might scare a couple people off, but a puck-moving defenseman that is still young and under control as an RFA next year is underrated. Looking at this style of defenseman, do you think he would fit on the Canucks and kind of help change things up on the defensive end?
Absolutely. I think when you look at his numbers, he's having a pretty solid year as far as defensemen go. Still having a really good time on ice, really good plus minus rating. You know, the stats are pretty solid, and he is a player that would fit very well within this Canucks team. I think when you look at the defensive core with what they are lacking as well as what they possess, I think he would bring a lot of what they are lacking and would gel well with a lot of what they already possess. You said it already, where he could play with Filip Hronek. That would be an interesting pairing to see. Or you put two puck-moving defensemen on the same line with him and Erik Brannstrom. I know I've talked about him a lot. I'm a big fan of his, but I think with having him on this team, Bo Byram has the potential to really reach a lot more things than we are capable of seeing him do within a terrible Buffalo franchise. They are just a sorry franchise that is just wasting his potential at this point. So hopefully he can come over to Vancouver. Maybe we don't have to give up too much for him. You don't want to give up one of our top 3 defensemen for him or too much draft capital. However, I think he is someone that we've talked about it a few months back even, where we've said how much he would fit on this team. We've said it a few other times on this show as well, that he would be a great fit on this Canucks team. Yes, the injuries are a major reason as to why we have been hesitant when the conversations that we've had about it and that everyone else has been thinking. However, if he is fully healthy, I think he has a very good chance at succeeding very, very well and maybe having career seasons with this Vancouver Canucks team.
And the biggest thing with Byram that a lot of people forget, he was a number 2/3 defenseman for the Colorado Avalanche when they won a Stanley Cup. Byram is still only 23 years old. Yes, the injury concern is there. Yes, we've seen Canucks management and reports come out that Tom Willander, Jonathan Lekmacki, the top prospects, are not available via trade. So it would be interesting to see what kind of trade Buffalo would want for a guy like this. But if you go back into this, you can see the segment talking about K'Andre Miller. You can pause, you can read through it about his qualities. But the biggest thing about K'Andre Miller is the fact the New York Rangers have been god-awful, and they are looking to make changes. A 6'5" defenseman, 24 years old. He has 7 points in 34 games. He is having a bit of a down year, but looking at the Rangers as a whole, who really isn't having a down year there? Looking at Miller, this is a fast defenseman. He has mobility for his size. You can see from this article, just speaking on him, he has the offensive talent. Yes, he makes some dumb plays sometimes. Every defenseman does, and I mean, we've seen it through some of the defensive core that we already have. Tyler Myers coughing it up in overtime, but we won't go into that. Looking at Miller, a young defenseman that can grow with this team, and once again, a defenseman that is an RFA, 24 years old. He is getting paid $3.8. He's going to look for a bigger contract going into the offseason. But this is yet again another left-handed defenseman that can move the puck on the back end, really hold down the second pairing. I'll throw it to you again. Do you think K'Andre Miller would be a better fit than Byram, or do you think both of these guys kind of bring the same thing?
I think Byram would be the ultimate better fit. That's not anything against Miller. I think he definitely needs to get the hell out of New York, get out of the Big Apple, because it's just a dumpster fire over there. And yeah, he's having a struggling season, but I don't think that reflects the type of player that he is. I think he's just a victim of circumstance right now. Now, is that to say that I think that he would be a better fit than Bo Byram? No. Is that to say that I would be wanting to give up somebody like Erik Brannstrom for him? No. I think as far as defensemen, I think anybody except for Filip Hronek, Quinn Hughes, and Erik Brannstrom are movable. I know we just signed Myers to an extension, so that's a bit tougher. But also, like you said with Miller, the thing that makes it the deciding factor ultimately is the contract. Bowen Byram, yeah, they have around the same kind of contract size. However, Miller is going to be looking to get a bigger deal soon. He's in the final year of that contract. So yes, they have a bit more time with Byram to kind of negotiate, kind of work out their cap situation and LTIR is things like that. I know we don't have any LTIR problems right now, but this is the Vancouver Canucks. It is going to be something that might happen in the offseason. Hopefully it doesn't. However, this is a team where we've had to move a lot around from a salary cap standpoint and making sure that we can meet the requirements and not overpay players. So if Miller's wanting an even bigger deal than he's already gotten, coming off of a season where he's been a victim of circumstance on a horrible New York Rangers team, I think that does a lot to hurt his potential contract value of the next team that he goes to, especially when it's a team that the Vancouver Canucks, they're not a team that can really afford to get guys like this. We've seen the contracts that are going to be expiring soon. We got Brock Boeser coming up. We got a few other guys coming up too in the next few seasons that you want to prioritize those more over somebody that you might be overpaying. Yes, we could risk that overpaying with those guys as well, but at least they're established members of this team and you're not bringing in a new guy that has to adapt to the system and make sure that he can also put up the production that he was with other teams. So I think that's a very risky move with Miller and as well as Byram too. You're making that risk as well as far as an injury standpoint. With the thing with the Canucks right now, the defensive core is so dire right now that they need anything to change it up. So I think if there's anyone that's on the chopping block, it's definitely going to be Derek Forbort, Noah Juleson, Vinny Desharnais. Those are the three that I'm looking at to move, potentially with some draft capital. Eric Brinsham, he's the second best defenseman we've had this season. Don't know why he's been a healthy scratch for the past few games. It's just ridiculous that Vancouver is doing that. I don't know why. I know that we want size for these games, but you need to get points scored, especially when Quinn Hughes isn't playing. So yeah, I think this is a situation where both these guys would fit in with this Canucks team. However, with Byram's injuries and with Miller's contract, I think those are enough reasons to be a little bit reserved. However, if they're able to get it at the right price and for the right amount to give up, I think go ahead and do it.
And the biggest thing is we've seen the Canucks go out and pick up some guys. Guys like Bowen Byram could come in and absolutely thrive in the system. A $3.8 million cap RFA at the end of the year. Same thing going into K'Andre Miller. We've seen the Canucks take some projects, and I don't want to say projects, but players that might have struggled or not fit another team's system and really dominate. But looking at two of these players, what would you like to go out and trade for these guys? Obviously, I know a lot of comments are going to say, we'd like to move a 7th round pick. But of course, something that small would not acquire these players. Another big thing is, like you said with the cap, the OEL cap hit actually jumps up $2 million after the buyout. The Jim Benning masterclass. So the cap will be a little closer next year. The cap will go up, so things would work out. But who would you like to acquire? Maybe it's one of these guys. Maybe it's someone on this list like Provorov, Ristolainen, Will Borgen, who was just traded to the Rangers as well. Let us know down in the comments. While you're down there, leave a like, subscribe, share this with your friends. We'll be back tomorrow with another episode, so keep your eye out for that. But I've been your host, Mark, with my co-host, Griffin, and take care.